without the years I spent in Europe, I wouldn't be the writer that I am. I would be a writer, probably, but a very different kind of writer. I have learned a lot, not only about literature, but also about myself. In my European years, Europe has been a great help to discover the kind of writer that I wanted to be, the methodology for writing that I have been using. And I think living abroad has given me a much larger horizon to see the world, to understand human relations, and also to understand my own country. I think the distance has given me a perspective that I wouldn't have had if I would have stayed in Peru. I am also very grateful to Europe, and particularly to France, because in France I discovered that I was a Latin American. This may seem to you a joke, but it's not a joke at all. When I went to France in the late 50s, I had no idea of Latin America. Of course, I knew that there were many Latin American countries, but I didn't feel myself a Latin American. I felt myself a Peruvian who wanted to become a kind of French writer, because I thought that France was the capital of the letters, of arts, and what I read at that time was mostly European writers, also American writers, but not Latin American writers. I didn't even know that there were important Latin American writers. And it was in Paris, at the same time that the French were discovering Latin American literature and translating Borges, Octavio Paz, Cortázar, Carpentier, later on Garcia Marquez, that I discovered that in Latin America there was a very, very rich, very original literature, and also that Latin America was a community from which I was also a part. And I felt this something that enriched my life very, very much, and also my idea of literature. And so I'm not exaggerating when I say that I became really a Latin American writer in France. I remember that in the 60s, a very good a French literary magazine, Les Lettres Nouvelles, consecrated an issue to Latin America. And Octavio Paz wrote the preface, and the preface was very, very interesting. The title of his essay was Paris, capital of the Latin American literature, in which he said how many writers, like was my case, had discovered Latin America from the perspective of Paris. Because in their own countries, because of the lack of communication, the lack of the Balkanization of Latin America, didn't have this idea of community, and they discovered this only from the perspective of Europe. No?